What's happening, folks? Back with one more piece in this opening day of Classical Days, a special series of reactions I'm doing over the course of about a week. Indeed, as I've mentioned a couple times already, I'm thinking I'm going to extend Classical Days one additional day into Saturday, so 6 days total. And we've saved a great one for the final piece of today, which is Peter Ilyich Tchaikovsky's Violin Concerto in D, one of the most famous violin concertos ever, and one I knew from childhood. My dad is a big fan of this, and as I mentioned before, I gained my appreciation for classical music through my father and his extensive classical music collection. And in that regard, there's been someone who's been asking for a reaction to Tchaikovsky's first piano concerto. I assure you that is coming this week, so bear with me. But yes, I knew this piece from childhood, but as with a number of other pieces I'm going to react to this week, it took on renewed and enhanced significance when I heard it as part of the excellent J-drama Notame Cantabile. If I can, I'll try to remember to put a link in the description here to my full watch-along of the series on Patreon. Even if you're not into Japanese television drama, I recommend you check it out. If you're a classical music lover, there's no way you won't enjoy it, and there's also great comedy and some emotional and romantic drama, so yeah, it's a brilliant show. And this piece features very prominently in the latter stages of the series. But yes, it was composed in 1878 in conjunction with Joseph Kotek, who I believe was a very close friend of Tchaikovsky and a violinist virtuoso. And I believe this piece also was composed with Edward Lalo's Symphony Espagnole very much in Tchaikovsky's mind. So yes, it has a very significant historical place in terms of its composition and certainly its impact. It's become, as I said, one of the most famous violin concertos anywhere. And I like all three movements. The first movement just has a special melodic beauty to it, though by the time we get to the end of the third movement, I think you'll agree all three movements have their place and comprise an excellent whole. So the first movement is quite long. Its performances vary, between like 15 and 20 minutes. I think this one is about 18 minutes, so we'll get it started. This is, and I don't have the CD here to show you, but it is conducted by Vasily Petrenko, performed by the London Philharmonic Orchestra, and we're going to hear Augustin Hadalich on the solo violin. So here we go, Peter Ilyich Tchaikovsky's Violin Concerto in D. The first movement is, I believe, an Allegro moderato. Is that right? Let me just make sure I'm right. Yes, an Allegro moderato, and it's also given a secondary tempo designation of moderato assai, which would be essentially very moderately. So here we go, Tchaikovsky's Violin Concerto in D, the first movement, an Allegro moderato. it's so ridiculously good. And the idea that that's just the first movement, I mean, I imagine most audiences would feel their price of admission had already been remunerated by hearing that. So, yes, I remember reading, and I think a couple different places, that part of the composition, again, was his friend Josef Kotek, who was a very talented violin player, and I think you can hear that in the solo violin part. And my understanding is, when some other people started to see the score for this, they were like, yeah, it sounds great in my head, but where do you find a soloist who can play this part? I think a lot of folks considered it nigh unplayable for most soloists and most violinists more generally. So yes, I suppose it is a piece that requires an incredible soloist. And I was thinking about it during the course of this movement, which is quite long, and I was thinking again about Nota Me Cantabile, where the main character, or one of the two main characters, Chiaki, who is a pianist, though he can play violin and he's a conductor, one of his mentors is telling him that, it's not just playing the notes, you have to feel the music, you have to immerse yourself in the music. And as a product of doing that, you will find yourself engaging in emotional gestures and essentially engaging in showmanship, which is not plastic, it's not just for show, it is part of, again, fully embracing the music as the composer intended. And when you do that, the audience will feel it more. And I feel like, number one, this type of performance from the soloist requires that level of immersion, not just precision and skill. And given how long the movement is, I was thinking most of the players in the orchestra will have the score in front of them. Obviously the conductor doesn't, so the conductor has to learn it note by note, section by section, and have it all in his head. But soloists don't have the score in front of them either, so they have to learn every nook and cranny of the piece. And, unlike athletes where, when you get out on the field, yeah, you have to have technique, you have to have an understanding of the game, but you improvise, you're playing things as they come to you. And although, again, a soloist, as with all players, will bring their own sensibility to the way they perform it and the way the conductor wants it, you still have to know the individual notes and the chords. So, yeah, to keep all of this piece as a soloist in your head, to perform it with all the emotion it requires, and to have the motor skill, the physical endurance and stamina to play this. Because, again, there's a lot of very fast playing. There's also playing that spans the spectrum of traditional violin bowing to very sharp and quick, almost like fiddle style bowing. It's just an incredible performance, or an incredibly demanding part for any soloist. So shout out to Augustin Hadalich. I think the rest of the orchestra played very well, so shout out to the London Philharmonic Orchestra and to the conduction of Vasily Petrenko. So yes, an amazing performance of an incredible piece, and there's still 2 more movements to go. So join me for the next one in a minute. Peace.